Morning. We are going to start our today's meditation session on self-fiction. What is self? Actually, we have discussed earlier in many of our sessions that self is an illusion. And actually how this illusion works, it works through our thoughts, through our automated thoughts. So whenever we are not engaged in or not observed in some activities, like some work which needs pure attention, and something which we like to do. For example, if I am fascinated with playing football, and I am in a match, and then I am solely engaged in that match, so at that time other thoughts would not much bother me. So this kind of automatic thoughts, they actually create the illusion of self. And the self fiction, actually it means that whatever thoughts we have, it acts like a novel or like a movie. When we watch a movie, we just watch one scene after another, one story or any fraction of a story, and they changes without our active will. That is why we enjoy watching a movie, or we enjoy reading a novel, because when we read a novel, we see different stories going on, and so we get amazed because there are uncertainty, there are unknown facts to be revealed in front of us, unveiled, and that's why they feel interesting. And so when we are sitting alone, like now, different thoughts might come into our minds, and they are spontaneous, and they create the illusion of self, or they portray the fiction of self. And how it works, it works like this. When we are not busy or absorbed in anything, any interesting work, then the thoughts comes in our minds. They are random, and they do not follow any specific rule, or they do not follow any kind of pattern, or they do not follow our own wish. If I want to wish to think only a certain thing, but it would not happen that way, because there will be other thoughts coming in my mind, and I will always be distracted. And this kind of ever changing pattern of thoughts, this is the self, because this everything tells us a story. So because the thoughts are centered surrounding me, whatever I think, if I think of a tree, so this is from my perspective. If I think of a person whom I know, that is also related to me, or anything about my work, my future, my family, everything, these are also surrounding me. So this creates the illusion or the fiction of me or self. And why it happens, that we'll discuss in our meditation. Now we can start our meditation. We will start by our breathing, by just focusing or observing our natural breathing. We can just observe our breathing, and sometimes we will also count our breathing, because we need some variation to keep our mind focused. So now we can start observing our natural breathing. Just observe our breathing. And now we can count our breathing from, we can breathe in counting from 1 to 4. Breathe, hold, counting from 1 to 4. And then breathe out through our nose, counting from 1 to 6. Again breathing exercise, counting from 1 to 4. Breathe, hold, counting from 1 to 4. And breathe out, counting from 1 to 6. Now we are in the state of meditation, and as we were discussing earlier, that the fiction of self, so there is a natural question comes at first, that why does it happen? Why we have that fiction of self in the first place? Or why did it evolve? Is there any purpose, or is there any practical implementation or any natural need for this kind of illusion? Yes, there is. Because when we think ourselves to be some individual person, that is some self or some entity or some agent or some person with the agency, agenthood or control on our environment, so that creates, that helps us as an organism to navigate in this world on the earth. So that is why self was necessary to be created in our brain as an holographic concept, as an illusion. Otherwise we would not be interested to drive, to take food, or to mate, to create children. So for the sake of evolution or species procreation, we are driven through some goals of eating and creating children. That's why this self was necessary to evolve. Of course, without self, other, for example, bacteria or virus, they also do the same thing, but it is not clear if they have the self. But we don't have the instrument to measure it, because we have our own instrument to measure our own consciousness passively, but we cannot apply it on other living beings or even inanimate objects, because we are not sure. We cannot be a rock to know if the rock has consciousness or if the rock has the feelings of self, because we cannot be a rock, so we can never measure it. So it would be actually inconclusive. We can guess, we can approximate, but we can never be sure without knowing it from inside, from without going through its own perspective. Again breathing exercise, counting from 1 to 4. Breathe, hold, counting from 1 to 4. And breathe out, counting from 1 to 6. There is another another aspect or another implication of that fiction of self, or another utility. It helps humans to lead to the social being, to be a social being. because when we interact in our group, in other with other humans, we need to think of every individual as separate being. So for that separation is needed, because uh, otherwise we would not act in social circumstances. So it also helps us to create the social network. So this is the second utility of that fiction of self. And now we will learn how to get rid of that fiction for some times, because it would not be possible to always get rid of that fiction of self, and it would not be natural either, because nature creates us in a way so that we can only seldom get rid of that fiction. It's like watching the movie. If it is a long movie, very interesting movie, we continue to watch it, but at some times we need to break. We need to do other stuff. We need to drink water or go to the washroom. So there are always some breaks. So in this fiction of self, there is always some breaks. And how it happens, or how we could learn to deploy these breaks, so and why we need it. It is not necessarily to be relaxed or to be happy. It is necessary because we need to know. We are curious being, and when we know the both sides of a coin, both light and darkness, both white and black, then we will understand everything more clearly. So if for some times we can get rid of that illusion or that fiction of self, we will know how it feels. And so this is just a contrast, and it would help accumulate knowledge in our brain. So now we will go through the how we can get rid of the fiction of self, and it is so simple and easy. So the easiest way to get rid of self, that fiction of self, that movie of self, the story of self, is just to focus on our natural breathing. So whenever we focus just on our natural breathing, the story pauses. The story pauses, or the movie pauses, and then we can feel what does it feel to be without the fiction of self. Just focus on your breath. Focus on your natural breathing, how air enters through your nose to your lungs, and then how it comes out from your lungs. Just the natural breathing, just focus on it in your own body. And while you are focusing on your breathing at this moment, no other thoughts can come to your mind, and that is that phase of focusing, that is the phase without the fiction of self. That is the period. So focus on our own breathing, natural breathing. Focus on natural breathing. We can feel the calmness in our mind and in our body, in our bodies. How? Why? This is not simply the meditation or some rituals. This is because we are out of the fiction. Because as we are focusing on our breathing, other thoughts cannot touch us intensely, cannot drive us intensely. We can just feel a gentle blow or flow of the thoughts, but they are unable to affect us because we are focusing on the natural pace, natural rhythm, flow of our breathing. Continue focusing on our breathing. Whenever some thoughts occupies us, it's okay. It's quite okay. As long as we just keep focusing on our breathing. Because when we continue to focus on our breathing, the thought suddenly disappears and we do not feel any regret. We do not feel any pressure or anything to be fixed or to think anything to be ideal, because there is nothing ideal, everything is okay. Focus on your breath. Everything will be settled spontaneously. Just focus on your breath, how it comes out, how it goes in, how the air moves from outside to our body and vice versa. This is the experience of mindfulness. This is the experience of meditation, the deepest core of meditation, because this is the freedom from the friction of self. Again, focus on our breathing, and it should be transient, because we cannot expect only light without any darkness, because we all would be blind if we are continuously exposed to light, or something would happen, because our bodies are evolved to experience both darkness and light. Focus on our breathing, on our natural breathing. We are feeling extremely good in a way that we feel so serene. So this is not actually happiness, because happiness is a contrast, because it is a contrast of sadness or unhappiness. But what we are feeling in meditation, or when we are just out of the story of self, that is the real being, that is experiencing our existence without clinging on ourselves, experiencing the world, experience the creation, experience the cosmos, everything. This is the whole existence beyond our physical body. Keep concentrating on our breathing, how air moves through our nose, through our lungs. Now we will count our breathing, counting from 1 to 4. Breathe in, breathe hold, counting from 1 to 4, and breathe out, counting from 1 to 6. One more time, breathe in, counting from 1 to 4, breathe hold, counting from 1 to 4, and breathe out, counting from 1 to 6. Focus on our own natural breathing. While keeping focus on our natural breathing, we can now open our eyes. And that is the end of today's meditation. So goodbye from Facebook Live. See you next week, hopefully.